Frumess.
Yes.
This is Jay Michaels.
Oh, hi, Jay. How are you?
Not bad. If I'm on the line, you're on the air. How are you doing?
Oh, crap. Wait, are we on the air right now?
Well, it's recorded, so don't worry about it. But yes, we are.
Okay. Hey now. I'm doing well. How you doing?
I have three types of callers. I have the person who knows I'm calling and immediately gets on, hello, or I get the person going, hi, what's going on? And they don't seem to care. And then we have yours, which is my absolute favorite. Are we on the air? Yes. Hi.
Yeah, you gotta prepare. I'm putting on Tales from the Crypt for my son. Tales from the Crypt Keeper. Sorry, he's going for.
Okay.
Don't want to have nightmares now, do we? Here you go, Jordan. Here's the gorilla paw. What's going on with you, Jay?
I am okay. How's everything where you are? Where are you?
I'm in Westchester, New York.
Westchester. Oh, you're in the really scary part for a while.
Supposedly.
Where?
Supposedly. That's what I'm told.
Were you near that particular epicenter?
Well, you know where New York, what's it called? I'm right near New Rochelle.
Okay. Then yeah, you were close by. So everyone safe and okay over there?
Yeah. We're weathering this just fine. It's no big deal. No big deal at all.
So as a horror filmmaker, I know you have something on Terror TV. I've been asking all the horror filmmakers this. I used to make the joke when this first started. I said, "Wow, this is like a horror movie." So I figured I'd ask those who understand it. How is this like a horror movie? What do you think of what's going on out there?
It's funny actually. I've never made a meme in my life, but because the thing about memes is, brevity is the soul of wit when it comes to memes. You gotta anticipate what's going to be funny, and you gotta get there before anybody else does.
Right.
And so I did that classic Ned Stark, something is coming. The winter is coming, and I said, Corvid. I said, quarantine viral film. Brace yourselves, quarantine viral films coming.
Yeah.
I thought it was so. Yeah, they're gonna come by the boatload. But no. Ask me that question one more time. This is the question you just asked. Go ahead.
From your point of view, from someone who understands the Fright film, what's going on out there? How do you interpret what we have here?
Well, I mean, what we have here is reality. This is reality.
Yeah.
And all horror comes from some real place. You know, at the end of the day, we make horror and we consume horror because it's a coping mechanism from a distance. It allows us to empathize and process situations that we never, ever, ever want to be in. Yet, for some reason, we need to experience them, but we experience them from our screens instead of in real life. Which is partially why, and that's why I truly think that there's you can take real situations like everything that's going on, and you can make something fictionalized. That's why I personally detest true crime. Especially when they're recreating something that really happened to someone for profit. That's why I hate those Manson movies. That's why I loved. I was not a big spoilers. I was not a huge fan of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I loved everything that they did with Sharon Tate because to turn her story into something not so tragic. When everybody capitalizes on the tragedy.
Of course.
And so, what we're going through right now, is it is it a horror film, or is it like horror film, or is there horror? Of course, but I mean, that's what everything is, that's what all you can pull parables or messages or themes out of any horror film. I mean, or just look at a great example of is Invasion of Body Snatchers, which is more sci-fi, but that's that's the invasion of the commies. The communists are among us. They're underlying. They're just like us, and we don't know. Your next door neighbor could be a commie. You don't even know it. Paranoia. Godzilla is the fear of the atomic age. One of the most terrifying horror films I ever saw is not even really a horror film; it's more of a docudrama. It's called Threads. It came out in 1984 on the BBC, and all it is just about the devastation that a nuclear bomb would cause, and it gutted me. It devastated me. It was more terrifying than any of the Friday the 13th films that I'm currently cycling through right now. I've never seen them before. So
they all get formulaic, but they all have that one message somewhere in there. It's slightly different each time, but they all give you that little creepy parable. It's an interesting point you bring up. Yes, this is total reality that we're dealing with here. And do you think? Hold on one moment, please.
Yeah, no problem.
Could you turn it off? I'm doing a million things while speaking to you at this particular hour. Do you think that we as horror folk, if you will, understand what's going on more than most?
I mean, I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that for sure every filmmaker out there is like, whoa, we're going through a pandemic. I'm going to make a pandemic film, that sort of thing. But that speaks to what I previously said before. You don't need, I don't think you necessarily need something real to invoke real things. Like, for instance, like we're kind of at the same time as like this being a pandemic, this also very much feels like the beginnings of what, what happens at the beginning of Night of the Living Dead. You know what I mean? Like, it really, I think that you can really plug in a lot of different situations, because what this all boils down to is, or the horror is really about like how humans behave, or at least one angle that you can sort of look at all this through and like in a prism is how human beings behave in this sort of situation.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing that at a government level. We're seeing that at there are some people who are sociopaths and just walk into supermarkets knowing that they're sick and just cough and sneeze and don't care. There are some people who are sick and set out to infect people and are being charged with crimes of terrorism. There are some people who are, have become incredibly agoraphobic and they're just locking themselves in. People that they love and care and cherish, what they, are just walling themselves in. And then there are other people who are like rising to the challenge of becoming like these heroes, these unsung heroes. Case in point, retail workers that are still, in their sort of like, bagging groceries and ringing people up. It's like, some people say, oh, they don't have a choice because they don't have, they only get paid if they go to work. So of course, they're going to go to work even under the circumstances. But, I don't think that. I think that they're, sort of like out there doing their thing. And that kind of reminds me of like, maybe that's kind of like the Ash complex, like, the everyman that rises to the challenge and becomes a hero. Because Ash is just an everyman. That's why people love him so much. Because he's just, he's just a guy. He's a guy who works at S-Mart, and he gets thrown into this situation, and he becomes this great hero, this great warrior, this guy who kicks ass. But ultimately, what is Ash doing? He's like facing off against the boogeyman. You know what I mean? Like he arms himself to the teeth with whatever resources he has, and he just faces the boogeyman, full on. And that's what these people are doing. They're facing the boogeyman that is this pandemic full on. I see like the mailman coming wearing a mask and everything. And I'm like, thank you for your service. Keep. And he's just like, I got it. It's just his job. Just got to do it. Just got to get out there and, plug away. And yeah.
That's really brilliant. You've summed up a whole facet of horror movies that I've not even really thought of very deeply. A major facet of all of them is some form of transformation. Now, we normally look at the transformation as into the monster, if you will, or the monstrous moment. But it's the hero also. They could be anybody. They could be the box boy. They could be the waiter. And they don't have to be the great hero at first. But it makes them transform into something.
Yeah, I really like that. I like that a lot, actually. It's like my kind of one of my favorite sort of tropes, and I really think that that kind of started with Ash. But the thing is, those dudes were influenced by like the Three Stooges and and their ilk, and one of the Three Stooges contemporaries was Abbott and Costello, and those
Yep.
guys were just like they were also like the Three Stooges. They're just everymen who find themselves in these situations with these universal monsters, and have these bumbling adventures, and they just sort of fall their way through it and end up unscathed. You see it in a movie like I'm trying to think what else. I don't know, but yeah, I think that's very, or at least that's how I choose to look at those heroes in this situation. Nurses, you say something about nurses, and
we see that in every 80s movie, if you will. There's always the group of teenagers, the group of people or whatever, and they stumble upon the satanic book or the trap door or the ancient cave or whatever the case may be. And some of them obviously are killed. They don't have it in them, if you will. And others become great heroes.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. So just all of us just basically staying indoors and just making sure we don't make others sick, or actually becoming a hero in some way.
Yeah, we're fighting the good fight. We're fighting the good fight by not fighting at all. That's essentially it. By just keeping to ourselves, we are hopefully fighting a good fight. And the thing is, not only is every filmmaker, big and small, influenced by today's current events and what's happening, but also due to the wonderful, beautiful democratization of the technology that is, DSLRs and laptop computer editing suites. You now have everybody's going to be making these pandemic movies. As I said,
sure.
That winter is coming, quote. And I bet you a whole handful of them are going to be really, really great. I know personally, there's a contest going on with Brew Morgue, and I wasn't going to do anything. But this contest, I thought, I came up with the contest has to do with quarantine, which to me, I'm not a fan of chasing trends, but I did think of a hook that I think would be a really interesting vehicle, and so I'm gonna see if something comes from it. It's not nothing set in stone.
Oh, that's so cool. Good for you.
Thank you. But it's like going back to like a great example, like going back to a movie like Night of the Living Dead. It's amazing how something can be elevated to something else. Just like as we were just saying, that every man can be elevated to a hero. It's also amazing how a situation becomes a different situation when you change one little thing. So if everybody's doing like the same quarantine movie, like there's one little thing out there that if they, whatever it is, I don't know what it could be, but if they just tweak it, that whole situation is going to become something else. Case in point, once again, look at Night of the Living Dead.
Oh, for sure.
They intended to cast the part of Ben as a white man. It was supposed to be a white guy.
Right.
And they cast him as a black, and they cast a black guy. And what's amazing about that is there was no thought in it other than the black guy was the
he was there
for the job.
Exactly.
No, he was just the best. He was the best guy for the job. Dwayne Jones, incredible actor. He was the best man for the job. But what happened when they cast him and put him in that movie? Suddenly, he becomes the protagonist against an antagonist who's white, and suddenly there's a level of tension that has nothing to do with the story. It has everything to do with this black man and this white man have tension, and you think it's about the house, you think it's about the rifle, but yet on another level, on a deeper subconscious level, it's like the colors of their skin.
It was a vast parable.
Interesting.
Yeah, what was meant to just be a twist horror movie ending turned out to be this major statement about racism and everything.
Especially in the last few years, it's amazing how that ending has come back to life in terms of like not come back to life, but it's a testament to its enduring quality. In that you have all these like these cases of talk about like real life events or, real life events like, influencing fiction and vice versa. You have all these, black kids getting shot by white cops.
Yeah.
And it's like, boom, this shit was happening 50 years ago in Night of the Living Dead.
Right.
And it's like, and when you watch that ending, you go, he points to Ben, who pops his head out of the window, and you don't know where they are in the country. The guys kind of look like rednecks. I mean, and you could easily convince yourself that he's saying, "Oh, look, there's a black guy. Shoot him." He didn't necessarily think he's a zombie. He just saw a black guy and shot the black guy. They're shooting zombies and black guys, and that's what it's just like, whether they intended it or not. They made such a statement on race and, just everything that's going on. And that's why Night of the Living Dead will always be one of the best films. And that's why, the reason why I bring up Night of the Living Dead is because, you're bringing up how, real life and horror and
exactly.
The connections and stuff. And it's like, that's why I love Night of the Living Dead so much, because it's just connected to so many real themes, there's so much real stuff in there. You can say so much, people talk about the Vietnam War, and they talk about, the power struggles between men. There's the race thing. There's so much going on. And, for years, people were like, Barbara, he wrote Barbara as like this witless girl who doesn't know anything. She runs to the house like a scared girl and just does nothing. She's useless on the couch. She's not useless on the couch. She's suffering from PTSD because she saw her brother get murdered.
That's right.
And it's like wow. It's like, wow. This isn't the invention of some ridiculous trope about women. He's talking about the effects of violence on the psyche and how it causes people to go into a catatonic state. Because for years I'm watching, like, she doesn't do anything. She sacrifices herself again. That's it. But she's just kind of like there. And then I was like, one day, it's just like, no, man, she's suffering from PTSD.
That's right.
She just watched her brother get murdered. And she's like, people are coming back from the dead. She's freaking out. And that's one of the very real things that would happen in a pandemic, in a global pandemic.
Of course.
People are going to have crazy PTSD. I'm sure half of those quarantine movies are going to be focused on the agoraphobic aspects of, like, I need to stay inside because I'm afraid I'm going to get sick.
Right. We can also go back to the whole outer enemy, if you will, the enemy you can't see, because the enemy is out there. We don't know where they are. By the fact we have to keep swabbing and covering our faces and whatever, the enemy could be anywhere. So we could create a parable of anything from technology to terrorism to anything, because it's the unseen enemy.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, totally.
There. Well, you're scaring me. What are you doing now? What movies have you done? Were you doing? What was going on before you decided to lock yourself in?
Well, it's funny. They say that in my experience, in a lot of different people's experiences, but in my personal experience, making your first feature-length film is like one of the hardest things. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever do in life if you're just making it with no money.
Oh, sure.
And people always talk about how hard it is to make their first film, and it's just really hard. But nobody ever talks about how hard it is to make a second film. That's even harder. And that's what I was struggling with. I made my first film, and what happens is you make a film, and then you rest on your laurels. You go, I did it. I did this big thing. I climbed to the top, and then you try to promote yourself and try to build your brand, and you go, hey, look at me. I try to do this thing, and all in the while you're going, okay, well, I'm just going to I just want people to know my name, in the sense of like, trying to build brand awareness. You're like, oh yeah, that's that guy that did that movie. It wasn't that great, but like, whatever. Yeah, that seems, yeah. I wonder what else he's going to do. That sort of thing. Trying to build, when you're building up a house and you're just like, you need to start somewhere. You have to start at the bottom. You got to lay. I don't know, what do? They put down, you got to put down, before there's any concrete, there has to be a really firm, bed of dirt, right? And so it's like, yeah, it's like that first film. It's like, all right, everybody thinks they're going to have a basement with their first film, but if you're thinking more pragmatically and realistically, you just go, oh yeah, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna lay down this bed of dirt, and then I'm gonna pour the concrete over it, and then I'll build the basement, and then I'll finish the basement, and then we'll move our way up to the second floor, and then the third floor, and
Right.
maybe I'll have an attic if I'm lucky. If I'm lucky, I'll get an attic. And so, yeah, I was like, was just like, yeah, all right. I patted down this dirt floor. It's all flat and level and surface. Now I can pour down this concrete. And it's like, it takes forever to pour down the concrete, for anybody who's lost by my analogy, I just mean trying to make the second movie. It's like you get there, you finish the first movie, it drains you, you're really, really tired. And the thought of doing everything that you did to make that first film makes you even more tired. And so you procrastinate and you get fearful and you're like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this. Maybe I can do this. Maybe I can't do this. You don't have the money. You spent all the money on the first film. How do you make money off of that first film? So how you can make the second film? And then, you know what? And in my case, I just, I wrote a script and I basically have been not sitting on it. I've just been working at I'm going to speak about myself in the third person for a moment. I work at the speed of Jeff. I can only go as fast as I can go. You know what I mean?
I completely understand that. Yes.
Yeah. So, it's like any creative understands that because, especially if you're a creative and being creative is not your full-time job. Because if being creative is your full-time job, you go, all right, pause everything. It's 9 o'clock, 9 to 5. I'm going to clock in and do my thing. But if you're working, if you're doing all your work outside of 9 to 5, because 9 to 5 is your day job to support what it is that you're doing, then, you go as fast as you can go because there's kids. Maybe there's a wife. Maybe there's, whatever. There's 100 different things. And then finally, after I cast most of my movie, this second movie,
yeah,
I was like, oh man, I didn't cast the other lead. But I was like, man, it's already February. If I'm going to get somewhere, I got to start shooting. So without casting the other lead, I picked all the scenes that I could shoot without that other lead.
Oh wow!
And I set a date. I put together a shooting schedule for. It's a 48-hour shooting schedule. 18 pages of it was 15 pages. It was 16 pages of the script, but it was 20% of the movie. So I was basically gambling. I was like, I'm going to put 20% of the movie on this one weekend. You know what I mean? So that's what I was doing. I'm going to be a weekend warrior. I'm going to shoot in these shooting blocks. And so I set this date 2 months out, and no, not 2 months out, more like 5 weeks out.
Okay.
I set the date 5 weeks out, and then I just start prepping my ass off. I prep, and I've never prepped like this before in my life because that's what I do. I set a shooting day, I prep for it, and then I shoot. And then I set another shooting day, and then I prep for it, and then I shoot.
Have you shot already?
Well, so yes. So what happened was, we set this weekend which was the first weekend of March. It's funny because we were talking about doing the second weekend of March. We set the weekend for the first week. We set the week for the first week of March. I've never done so much script coverage and shot lists, and I'm building props. I'm doing all this stuff. I'm canceling any extracurricular things that I might do in my spare time, except for going to the Alamo Draft House, which is like my church. So I go there. But that's
understood.
One thing that I have the season pass. I have to go to the Alamo. But other than that, everything else canceled, and then just every day getting off work, going down in the basement, clocking into the second job, which is, after the kids are asleep, which is just trying to get everything organized and set up and ready to go. And you know what? I went into that shoot, and I had to shoot it in a particular way where I didn't have a lot of money to pay crew, so I had to take on a lot more hats. I mean, the classic indie story.
Oh, of course.
Indie filmmaker. But ultimately, what a lot of people, some indies, the less mature ones, they'll blame everybody else for their mistakes. But I knew going in that whatever happens, I have to own it. It's 100% my fault if I fail because I'm choosing to make a movie this way. But the flip side of that is, if I don't make a movie this way, I won't be able to make movies, period. Because
I hear you.
Can't afford to.
Well, indie begins with I.
Yeah, man. And so it's like a catch-22. So I set the date, and I'm literally the entire, like, I'm 2 weeks out, and I'm just starting to prepare myself emotionally for the very possible reality that I'm not going to finish the shoot because of, Murphy's Law, because of the fact that I've taken on just way too much.
Did you get anything in the can by the time you had to lock down?
So come the day, the thing was, we were shooting all the apartment scenes. So that was like the one thing that I did that made it all possible to shoot 20% of the movie was I made sure that all the scenes were apartment scenes in this one place. 20% of the movie happens in one apartment. There are a lot of different locations. Because, the thing is, if you're making a micro-budget film, which this was,
sure,
the way to make your movie look bigger than it is, look like you spent more money, make it look bigger, is have more locations. But that also brings a problem because, the one thing that will kill your film shoot is switching locations on the same day. That will kill you. So you have this choice. It's like, okay, well, I'll shoot longer. Instead of shooting a movie in 15 days, I'll shoot a movie over 8 months, and I'll go to each, wherever, try to group locations as close as possible together, so that way, there's not that much lag time. Yada yada yada. I'm going off on a tangent. Back to this thing. So
yes, we're running a little out of time, so I was just I wanted to hear the reveal.
So it's not much of a reveal. I went into battle. We ended up getting the whole time I just kept thinking we're probably gonna fall behind schedule, and we ended up making the whole day. We got every single shot that we needed. As a matter of fact, by the end of day one, we were actually ahead of schedule, and it just goes to show that if you really it really goes to show that with enough time, preparation, and you need the right balance of ego and humility. You have to have confidence in yourself that you can do it. But at the same time, you have to be afraid. There has to be a very, very healthy fear that you might fail. But then at the same time, you have to have this attitude of like, I got to try my best. I got to absolutely do my very best. So that way, if I do fail, I know that I put 110%, no matter how crushed I am, that I didn't get my day.
There was another filmmaker I spoke to. He summed it up really well, actually. He said he was on his second film also, and he said the first film you go into it in terror because you don't know what's going to happen, and in the second film you go into it in terror because you know what's going to happen.
Yes, that's so true. But that also tempers your emotions of like, I might not make my day, and then halfway through that first day, I'm starting to go, actually, okay. Because at first I was like, we were doing really well, and I'm going, oh man, like this is great, but don't speak out loud yet. You don't know what's going to happen. You could, something could happen, and it was like that the whole shoot. We made our day. We made both of our days, and then the next week I was supposed to fly to Florida for another film shoot, and I had to cancel my flight because the
COVID-19, the newest monster.
COVID-19. Yeah.
Wow.
So, but the amazing thing was, I was watching all these friends of mine who are filmmakers cancel their shoots, and I'm crushed for them. And at the same time, I'm going, fuck, dude, you filmed the weekend before COVID-19 hit. You got 20% of your movie in the can before this whole shit hit the fan. Could you imagine if you moved it a week later after all that prep?
It's funny you say that. I thought that was going to be your reveal, and you say, well, we moved it the next week, and then. But actually, you get the happy ending. Because at least you have you at least have that there that you were able to complete before any of this hit. In a way, it goes back to what your parable before. It was like we look at things one way and then we look at it another. Yes, it's terrible. You haven't finished the film, but it's wonderful. At least you got something in there. There are people who stopped in mid-camera.
Yes, and I did think in the back of my mind, and again, stop this whenever you need to for time consideration, because you said you're running out of time. The thing that and of course when you're trying to make a movie, you have to have plan B, C, D, F, G, all those sorts of things. And I kept thinking in my head, if for whatever reason something happens, an act of God, whatever, I can't, or whatever circumstances come that I can't shoot any more of this movie. If it's because of this quarantine, if it's because of like things not returning to normal, people not getting back to their jobs, because not only am I set back, but everybody in the movie is set back, and everybody
Sure.
has different circumstances, and everybody has to get back to a place where they feel, open and comfortable to donating their weekend to shooting a no-budget micro film.
Of course.
But I thought in my head, I said, well, all the scenes are in the same location, and you could definitely turn this 20% into a short film.
Of course you could.
You could definitely make a short film out of the material that you have, no matter what. As they say that Michelangelo, he had his block of granite and he had to look into it to find the statue or whatever. There's definitely a movie inside of the teeny block of granite, even if it's not a bigger one.
Well,
And,
Orson Welles used to call filmmaking happy accidents. And
Yes.
and there was a wonderful story about him, and he's with Peter Bogdanovich, and he was filming Peter Bogdanovich, and he from the camera he screams, "Okay, Peter, come running toward me." And Peter said, "Okay, well, what's my intention?" And he said, "I'll tell you when you get here."
That's great.
Do you and he just was running to, and apparently he just wanted that life from it. I always found it ironic that he didn't give him any intention. He just wanted the natural happy accident of his arrival. Jeff, thank you so much. You brought to light a whole different thing in terms of horror movies for me, in terms of transformation, which I'm going to take with me. Thank you so much. A pleasure speaking to you. My pleasure. I hope the other 80% of your movie gets done, and I look forward to hearing much more wonderful things from you.
Okay, man.
Thanks again.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate your time. And
My
your work.
pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks.
Stay safe and well. Okay.
Indeed. Same to you.
All
Ciao.
right, thanks, Jay.